All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Harakah Kodash. A double honors unto the apostles and elders of GMS Great Millstone, and a sincere shalom to Yakim bringing out this word in diligence and in truth. And as you see, the title of this lesson says, "Mr. Welfare Man: The Destruction of Jake's Household Structure." And it's the spirit, the spirit got on the Elder Shaquat, mentioned this song at camp yesterday. Um, but the spirit got on him to say, "Hey, bro, you got to do a lesson on this." So the spirit hopped back on me, to um, actually bring forth a lesson, on this exact topic, man. I know Elder Apostle Kabar, he always does, lessons on certain songs that have, spiritual meaning, historic understanding. So this is one of those lessons. This song is entitled "Mr. Welfare Man" by Gladys Knight and the Pips. Now, the thing about um, this song in particular, it was dropped or released in 1974, right? And it's talking about the social issues that Jake had to face, and being impoverished and ultimately being under the curses, man, right? So I want to start off. I wanted to play some of it, but more than likely, if I play it, the lesson will be taken down or stripped from YouTube. So I'll just go into the lyrics, right? So dropped in 1974. I mean, you see, it's entitled "Mr. Welfare Man," and she says, "Keep away from me, Mr. Welfare." So who is she speaking of? She's talking about Esau, Edom, man, the government, right? Because here it is, and I have some history here as well, right? Grab here. So basically, I went into chat and said, "How were so-called black men and fathers systematically taken away from their households in the 50s and the 60s?" And it reads, "Black men and fathers were not removed from their households by any single policy, but a network of laws. Policies, practices, economic pressure, and social systems in the 50s and 60s made the black family stability extremely hard to maintain. And it just doesn't occur for, so-called Negroes, man, or the Southern Kingdom. This occurred for both the Southern and the Northern Kingdom, right? In a place where we're both oppressed together, the Northern and the Southern Kingdom, both under the curses, man. So we all had to face this as a nation, right, due to our disobedience. Matter of fact, I'll grab that first precept there in the book of Deuteronomy, 28th chapter, right? Because this is one of the curses, right? It's Deuteronomy 28th chapter. I'll share it here. Oops. Oh, snap. This is Deuteronomy 28, and it's like 40. Here we go. Deuteronomy 28 and 43. And it reads, "The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low," right? "He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail," right? And this is due to our disobedience. How do we know? When we go into the Deuteronomy 28th in the 15th verse, it says, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy power, Yahweh, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." So what we're reading is that overtaking, right, due to our disobedience. So as we read in the 44th verse, "He shall be the head and thou shalt be the tail." This is exactly what we seen, right? Of Esau, Edom being the head, and ultimately, our women, trusting within that system to the point where their men were uprooted out of their houses, man. Now, I also want to go into the book of Genesis, the third chapter, right? Because, as a matter of fact, while I do that, I also want to go into the Apocrypha really quick and go to the book of Sirach, the 25th chapter, right? Yep. All right, so this is Genesis 3, right? Going under understanding what happened in the garden, right? This Genesis 3 at the top. It says, "Now the serpent was more subtle than, or subtile than any beast of the field which the Lord thy power had made." Now, this isn't a physical snake, man. No, this is giving forth the characteristics of a man, right? Just as Esau is the spiritual, or it's like the physical counterpart of the spiritual demon Satan. Well, guess what? This serpent, was having that same lot, which it wasn't a man. It's like it wasn't a snake, it was a man. Slip of the tongue, not the heart, man. The serpent was a man, right? It's giving forth its characteristics. As Esau's that cunning hunter, hey, well, this serpent, hey, was a man as well. It says, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord power Yahweh had made. And he said unto the woman, yea, them hath Yahweh said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden. And the reason I'm grabbing this is because, he pitched Eve a dream, right? And with that came the benefits from the serpent, man, right? You see, when we go into the book of Isaiah, 32nd chapter, it speaks about the teats, and all the basically different delicacies, and or government programs in which, he's allowed our women to benefit off of without the usage of her head. Ultimately, she threw away her head for those benefits, man, right? So when he pitched her this dream, sold her this vision, we're going to read it. Hey, she took it and ate it because she seen it pleasing unto her, right? It says, and the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, the Most High hath said, ye shall not eat, right? Now, 1 second. Yeah, Alahayim, right? There is that word, H430, Alahayim, right? Because we understand there was prophets within the garden as well. Same lots, man. It says, but of the tree, but of the fruit which is in the midst of the garden, the powers of the Alahayim hath said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, ye shall not surely die. And that itself was a lie, right? So here it is. She had no business speaking to the man. But nevertheless, he tickled her ears, told her what she wanted to hear, to the point where what? Well, she trusted this man over the guidance that her man and ultimately the Lord gave her, man. Right? So to go back here, it says 5, it says, for the Alahayim doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil, which that part is true. But the portion where he said, ye shall not surely die, was completely false. It says, and when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, right, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat. Right now, the Christian church will tell you, it was a particular fruit, which is false. It was a collection, of ideologies, or you can say philosophy, man. Right? Same way that Jake took the philosophies of the heathen, ran with it, and multiplied in the wickedness. Hey, well, this was the same. It says, and when the woman saw the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. Right? So that in itself, matter of fact, I'm gonna jump down. It says, and the man said, the woman whom thou was gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat it, and I did eat. Right? And the Lord Yahweh said unto the woman, what is this that thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. And the Lord Power said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and the dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Right? Now, when we go into the book of Sirach, Ecclesiasticus 25 and 24, it tells us, of the woman came the beginning of sin, and through her we all die. Right? Now, part of the punishments that we have to play on the earth, play out on the earth, and what those curses do to our disobedience that we read in the book of Genesis, the 28th chapter, in the 42nd or 43rd verse down, right? So that's that in the book of Genesis. Now, to get to this, to get to this song, which is the point of the lesson, right? Here it is. Gladys Knight is singing, keep away from me, Mr. Welfare. They just keep on saying I'm a lazy woman. Don't love my children and I'm mentally unfit. So here it is, Esau going into that categoreo, right? Categorizing them as women who are unfit, to actually lead women, which in essence, it is true, because it takes a unit. It takes both that man and that woman in order to lead these children, right? They say, I must divorce him, cut all my ties with him, because his ways, they make me say, it's a hard sacrifice not having me a loving man, right? So here it is. These were the qualifications right? In order to receive those benefits, she had to divorce her man, cut all ties with him because of his ways. They made her say that, right? And what did she do? She went along with it instead of having some integrity and basically not divorcing her head, right? Because when we go into the book of First Corinthians, the 14th chapter, and we start here at the 8th verse, it says, "For the man is not of the woman, but the woman is of the man. Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man." Right? And when we go up, so like in First Corinthians 11, I'm gonna jump 1 second. Here we go. Verse 3 says, "But I will have you know that the head of every man is Yahweh Shai, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Yahweh Shai is Yahweh." Right? So that's that order. So ultimately, Eve severed that order, right? And as you see, she was just speaking on behalf of all the women in this era, you know, who received these benefits and ultimately put their man away for them, right? How do we know? When we go back to the history here, right, it says black men and fathers were not removed from their households by any single policy, but a network of laws, policies, practices, economic pressures, and social systems in the 50s and 60s made black family stability extremely hard to maintain, right? Now, the fourth point is the one I want to actually focus on, right? Well, I'll hit a 3 as well. It says housing segregation and displacement, urban renewal equals Negro removal. Federal programs label black neighborhoods as blighted, then destroyed them to build highways or revitalize city centers. It says it caused mass displacement of black families, forcing many to live apart. Housing instability, right? And this catapults into the fourth portion. It says which pushed some fathers to leave if they couldn't contribute financially. And it already spoke about job discrimination and economic displacement. So the men who were trying to, build forth a established household for their families and be able to pour back into those living quarters, they were discriminated against, so they couldn't. Right. This is also, when East started bringing drugs later into the 70s, 80s, 90s, so forth and so on, man. Right. And that just became another way to break down the family structure of our people, man. And like I said, it's not just the so-called Negroes that dealt with this, but it was the Northern Kingdom as well, the so-called Latinos and Native Americans. But this is the point. It says welfare policies that discourage male presence, right? The man in the house rule. In several states in the 50s and 60s, welfare programs created rules like if a man found living in the home, mothers lost benefits. Social workers did nighttime checks to uncover signs of a male partner. Some states denied aid if the father was unemployed or underemployed. These policies sent the message if the father lives here, your children lose food. It did not force families apart legally, but it pressured poor black families to separate in order to survive economically. And it's the spirit because you have brothers. We spoke about this. We touched on it it's like yesterday at camp. I can say last night at camp, really. Um, you have brothers who lived during this time where, they witnessed, a social worker coming into their houses and their aunties and mom had to put up, or hide the clothes, the shoes, the underwear of their uncles and fathers so that they could receive the benefits, man. Brothers lived through this, right? So it's not as if this is something that was just made up. They discouraged and did not want male presence within the households because they ultimately wanted the mind of the woman, the mind of our women, right? To become fully dependent upon the system in which they could then say, oh, I don't need a man. Look, I got a house. My kids got food. What you doing for yourself? And you still see, the pattern and the effects of this today. When you had a whole generation of men and women who were raised without fathers because they were systematically pushed out of the houses, man. So this song is on point because it shares exactly what occurred during these times, man. This is just another way in which how Esau destroyed our people, man. So matter of fact, let's go back here. Right? It says they just keep on saying I'm a lazy woman, don't love my children, and I'm mentally unfit. Now, who set forth this system, you know, to where it deems our women as lazy and unfit? Eve will come up with all these narratives to ultimately strip the kids of that foundation. Was that not what the Willie Lynch letter was about? You know, about ultimately breaking the head of the household in order to what? To have the women and children succumb into his system? Matter of fact, I have a precept for that. This is Matthew, the 12th chapter. And I'm going to start here. I know it's in the book of Mark. So, like, I want to grab it in the book of Mark. But Matthew 12 and 29 is the point. But I know it says it in the book of Mark as well. Yeah, here we go. This is Mark 3. And 27. It says, no man can enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he will first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house. And that's ultimately how Jake was taken over. The strong man was bound, his goods were stripped of him. So like it. The strong man was bound, his goods were spoiled. And part of those goods are what they would call booty in war, right? Or just surprise possessions or things that are of quality and worth something, right? Esau took them to the point where now the partnership is between Esau, Edom, so-called white man, and our women, right? It's to the point where our men and women don't even have unity or unison between each other, man. She's fully in with the poison of the serpent, right? But we're seeing slowly and slowly, it's becoming gradual, that our women are now suffering because they trusted in this devil, man. Matter of fact, that's coming. That's another precept out of the book of Isaiah, the 36th chapter, and also Sirach, the 13th chapter. So I wanna grab both of those as well. So I can. This is Ecclesiasticus 13. Matter of fact, I'm gonna start at 12th chapter. I'm gonna grab 13th chapter and the 12th chapter. I want to read this in the NLT, see what it says. This Mark 3 and 27 in the NLT says, let me illustrate this further. Who is powerful enough to enter into the house of a strong man like Satan and plunder his goods? Only someone even stronger, someone who could tie him up and then plunder his house, right? And ultimately, Yahweh Shemel Shai gave Esau that power, to plunder the house of Jake, man. Due to our disobedience, the earth was given into the hands of the wicked. So the Lord has allowed Esau, Edom to rule over us, with with strong rigor, man. To the point where, as when we read in the book of Jeremiah, so like, I'm gonna grab it really quick. Jeremiah 17:4. Right, and thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. And that forever isn't for eternity, but it's for an appointed time. How do we know? Well, when we go back into the book of Revelation, and it speaks about how the Lord is going to redeem us of the curse. There shall be no more sorrow. There shall be no more tears. I believe it's Revelation 21. It shows that anger is going to be dissipated. It's no longer going to be an effect, right? Since we've been reconciled back unto Yahweh through the blood of Yahweh Shai, right? So we've discontinued from thine heritage. Because when you take a look at our customs, the ancient customs it took ultimately a village to raise, our kids, man, right? The father, he had multiple wives. The wives had maids, and the children were raised up with the family structure, right? The father being the head, and ultimately the father trusting and having faith fully in Yahweh Shai and Yahweh, right? And that was the backbone, right? The position of the woman is very important because she's supposed to, the orders from the father, the how can you say it? The orders from the father, and also, I was about to say responsibility. But the patterns the father has, the woman, she's supposed to send forth that order into the children, man. That's why you always see, especially in in Jake's what you call it, in Jake's life, the kids can be bad, so to speak, around the mom, but the moment she says, "I'm gonna tell your dad," that's when they tighten up, man. So she's supposed to establish forth that order as well from the father to her children, man. As well as raise them up, so forth and so on, man. But she's a line of defense as well, you know. But to get back to the point, so like, I'm gonna grab this in the book of Sirach 12, right? Because this is what our women did to get in the position of Esau having that much power over them, and their man ultimately being thrown in the trash. Sirach 12 and 10, and it reads, "Never trust thine enemy, for like his iron rusteth, so is his wickedness." Right? And it's speaking to Esau Edom. It says, "Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust hath not been altogether wiped away." Right? You're going to be able to see through his wickedness, man. And he comes with a forked tongue, as the scripture says in the book of Psalms. It says, For in his mouth it's like his words were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. Yea, they were drawn swords, paraphrasing, man. So he gives the appearance of docility as somebody that actually wants to help you. And here it is. He'll even give you some toys, so to speak, to play with, some benefits from the government, so that it seems as if what you're missing, it isn't much, but really it was, right? You traded your structure, your family household, for a place to stay, or for a couple extra dollars for your kids, man. And that's going off. That's going off, man. Because look at the results of it today. You have families, generations of our women who are still on welfare, who are still on Section 8, abusing the system, not even trying to get better, having tons of kids, with no responsibility, no type of accountability. Hey, and you have a generation of men who are raised by women, and they're what? Emotional. They're literally just the carbon copy of their mothers, but in a testosterone filled body. And that's dangerous. They aren't raised with any type of reverence or respect towards men or women, and they're monsters. And then you have a generation of women who act like men. So both sides have been destroyed due to the fact that the father is not in the household, man. Right? Verse 13, Sirach 12 and 13, it says, "Who will pity a charmer that is bitten with a serpent, or any such as come nigh wild beast?" Right? So, hey, we don't have any pity for the women of our nation who believe in this system, because guess what? You're going to see at the end, we're nigh towards that point. Hey, that Esau was only set to use you against us, right? And in doing so, guess what? It's going to come a point in time where you're going to need your man again. And that's what we're seeing. Hence the scripture of Isaiah, the 4th chapter, Isaiah, the 32nd chapter, Isaiah, I believe it's 13, right? All those different chapters are speaking about how Yahweh Shema Shai is going to raise forth up men, to be finer than a golden wedge of Ophir, so forth and so on, man. Right? This is Sirach 13 and 4. It says, "If thou be for his prophet, he will use thee. But if thou have nothing, he will forsake thee. If thou have anything, he will live with thee. Yea, he will make thee bear and will not be sorry for it." So what was it that our people had that he wanted to destroy? What was ultimately a generation of respectable, or what would have been respectable, young like-minded warriors as their fathers, man. You take a look at the men from the 50s, the 60s, and these were very masculine men, right? These are the men who went to war at the age of 16, 17, 18, came back to try to find a job opportunity for their families, and were ultimately discouraged and pushed out of the way. So they resulted in all manner of different evils, whatever they could fall in, because they weren't innocent, you know. Ultimately, Yahweh Shem Shah put those hells upon them for this appointed time, but nevertheless, they were masculine men who knew who the devil was, right? And he looks at that as a threat. When you know your enemy, that's when he'll try to creep in and supplant, just like Jacob, our forefather, did unto him, man, unto Isaac, to get the birthright. It says, if thou be for his prophet, he will use thee. But if thou have nothing, he will forsake thee. If thou have anything, he will live with thee. Yea, he will make thee bear and will not be sorry for it. So he's not sorry for what he did unto you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. He relishes in the fact that he's overcome you, right? It says, if he have need of thee, he will deceive thee. And that's exactly what he did. He deceived you by the ways of benefits, and smile upon thee and put thee in hope. He will speak thee fair and say, what wantest thou? Oh, you need a place to stay? Oh, you need more food on your table? Well, get rid of your man. Show me how much you want this. He pimped our women, man. He pimped them. So to go back here to the song, says they just keep on saying I'm a lazy woman, don't love my children, and I'm mentally unfit. He broke you down and gave you some a toy basically. They said I must divorce him, cut all my ties with him, because his ways they make me say. Because of his ways they make me say, basically. Giving them basically false reasons as to why she wanted to divorce her man. She said it's a hard sacrifice not having me a loving man. So how much more in these times that we're coming into, right? You're seeing a bunch of women on the internet complaining on how men don't want to approach them, how men ain't giving them the chance or the light of day, so forth and so on. Ultimately, hey, when a woman doesn't have a man in the days that we're coming into, she's just going to be a spoils man, just pure spoils. Because you need a man to protect you in the days that we're coming into. You can know all the arts of different martial arts, so on and so forth, man. That means absolutely nothing when you're coming across a man. What? And it's not just your man; it's any man. These Gurgur troops, they're not going to care. They're not going to have any pity. The scripture tells us that in the book of Ezekiel 9, right? And most importantly, a man of Yahweh Shemel Shai. Because you can have any man and still be, still have some judgment brought upon you. It says, not having me a loving man, society gave us no choice, right? That's E. Tried to silence my voice, pushing me on the welfare. There it is. I'm so tired of trying to prove my equal rights. Though I've made some mistakes, for goodness sakes, why should they help me? Or it's like, why should they help mess up my life? And she understood that's exactly what he did, is they ultimately helped them mess up their lives, mess up the lives of the children for generations to come, right? Trusting in the serpent. This is the book of Isaiah, the 36th chapter, in the 6th verse. It says, lo, thou trustest in the staff of this broken reed on Egypt, whereon if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all that trust in him, right? That staff, trusting in the staff of the broken reed, right? The staff is a support system, right? It says, and you trust in that staff or that support system, but it's a broken reed, right? Whereon if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. Meaning, as the Elder Squad always says, man, and the devil always wants his money back, right? So you trusting in this system is ultimately going to pierce you and hurt you. It's going to make you bleed. You're going to bleed out by trusting in this system. Ultimately meaning that what? There's always an ulterior motive with Esau Edom, man. There's never, he does not, the scripture says, can the leopard change his spots? Can the Ethiopian change his skin? Well, neither those that are accustomed to do evil good, man. Right? Meaning what? And the scripture also tells us, he that is evil unto himself, to whom shall he do good? So it was never in your interest or for your best interest to receive these government assisted programs and ultimately put your man away. Because you created a war within your own community and you trust in the devil. Hey, Esau had his woman at home, right? Even when you take a look at that whole civil rights / women lib era, the white woman or the Edomite woman was complaining that she wasn't getting a large piece of the pie from her man. But you know what? She still had her man. All women started complaining to the point where they pushed their men away. Here it is. Neither one of us had any crumbs from off the table, and you wanted crumbs or a piece of the pie. And your man couldn't, his duty or job was never to set forth the Israelite man on top. He looks at us as a threat, right? But if he can get our women to trust in his system, in his plan, and there's a quote that says, you know the state of a nation by looking at the state of their women, right? And look at our women today. Through, right? So I want to go back here. She said, "Oh, so keep away from me, Mr. Welfare." Basically saying, Esau, get the hell away from me, man. Did you hear me? Keep away from me. Holding me back, using your tactics to make me live against my will, right? Basically living against that order of her and her man being in unison, twain, right? If that's how it goes, child, I don't know. I can't concede my life for real. It's like a private eye for the FBI, just as envious as the KKK. Though I'm of pleasant fate, it's hard to relate. I'll do the very best I can. She basically saying, I'd rather not accept, the deal between her and the devil, and I'll just fight for my kids and my husband herself. But she already said that, hey, she had to push away her man. So now she got to really fight by herself, because she doesn't have that head and that hedge anymore, right? And it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but this part right here is like a private eye for the FBI. Go back here in the chat GPT, right? Of them checking the houses of Jake to basically say no man can live here. So I told him to give me more detail on number 4, the welfare policies that discourage fathers in the home. It says the Aid to Dependent Child Care Program, or the ADC. Before it was called welfare, the main program for poor mothers and children was ADC. Created in 1935, it was supposed to help families where the father had died, abandoned the family, or could not work. But beginning in the 40s through the 60s, states increasingly added rules to restrict Jake families trying to access benefits. That's Southern and Northern Kingdom. So Southern states especially wanted to avoid giving so-called black families financial independence, so they added morality tests, checked for suitable home conditions, and enforced limits on working mothers. By the 1950s, ADC was functioning very differently depending on race. Meaning, if you was an Edomite, you can get it. But Jake had to go through loops, and ultimately had to break up what the Lord set forth as a truth, as a whole, to stay on it. It says the man in the house rules. The most damaging policy was the man in the house rule. The fact that they called it that is crazy. But this is just another reason why Esau Edom is going to pay. It says the substitute father rule, suitable home rule, employable father rule. What it meant: caseworkers would deny a mother welfare benefits if a man was living in the home, or a man was suspected of having a relationship with her, or even if male belongings suggested a man might stay overnight. This included shoes, clothes, razors, or shaving tools, a man's car parked outside, rumors from neighbors, child resembling a known man. Caseworkers were documented doing night raids or late night drop-ins. Hey, is that not the tactics of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan? Searching drawers and closets. These are raids, just like in the slave quarters. It says questioning children about when did daddy last visit, checking for male odors, razor blades, or men's boots. This wasn't anecdotal. Court records and policy papers from the 50s and 60s describe these practices openly. Hey, Lord, if you're a brother, that lived through this, and you got a testimony, you could put it in the comments, in the chat, man. Right? It says, if any sign of a man was detected, the mother and children were cut off immediately from benefits. This forced many families into an impossible choice: keep the father in the home, but lose the only stable food and housing support. Have the father move out so the children could eat. So what did Jake do? What did the women do? The father had to move so the kids could eat, right? And this Satan, because this ain't never made this sound here. Nevertheless, we're gonna keep pushing. It says black families receive more home inspections, right? Black mothers on relief were far more likely to get unannounced visits, home searches, suitable inspections. White families, especially widows, were treated more respectfully. It says the absent Negro father narrative. By the early 1960s, social scientists and government agencies built the stereotype. Black poverty is called by black fathers abandoning their families. So this is just another way, that E set forth that narrative back then. When you take a look at media, it's a tool used to destroy any narrative that they or I should say any truth that they don't want pushed by their narrative, right? So E creates these phrases and these code words in order to um, basically try to highlight, the wickedness, I should say, or what he created as wicked and put upon Jake, right? So that whole term, uh, absent black father, that was created in the 60s, man, right? By E. Even though he systematically created the environment for Jake, he used it against you. Like there's a scripture, they accuse us before our power night and day. This is part of that, right? It says the narrative ignored job discrimination, mass displacement from urban renewal, and the man and house restrictions that pushed fathers out, right? So even though he did all the work to get us out, and that's why the scriptures also tell us, for they sleep not except they have done mischief, and their sleep is taken away unless they cause something to fall. Ultimately, the heart is deep. So what did he do? He came up with a way in order to get our women completely away from us, and yet still give them the quote unquote necessities without giving them that head. Now he becomes the head. Scarface, the rapper, he has it's like a zero. He has a song where he said, "The streets always been my daddy. My mama was the county jail." Right? That's because the fathers were absent from the houses. Right? Due to this time period, through the 40s, 60s, 70s, 80s, so forth and so on, man. Right? The welfare rules require fathers to be absent for families to receive aid. It punished poor families for trying to stay together. Right? Punish poor families for trying to stay together. It reminds me of the decree, in the sense in which Antiochus Epiphanes, you know, uh, decreed in the Grecian Empire, of Jake basically trying to cleave unto the ways and the what do you call it, the commandments, the law, statutes, commandments of the scriptures, the heritage of their fathers, and if they would do so, they would be put to death. Well, he said, hey, well, you want to be a family, and well, we're going to penalize you for it. So I'm going to read some more of this. That's the hook. She's basically saying, oh, that's pretty much it. So I guess it's one verse, two verses, and the rest is hooks. But she's saying keep them away, man, right? Because she see the damage that it did. Now, I want to go here into the book of Isaiah, the 32nd chapter, because we see that what Esau established, back then is now being uprooted, ultimately to the point where, our women are feeling it more. Those same women that gave in into the narrative, that didn't try to fight against it, that basically believed the poison that he gave them, these are the ones that's feeling it the most. It's Isaiah 32:9. It says, rise up, ye women that are at ease. Hear my voice, ye careless daughters. Give ear unto my speech. So like I'm not even showing it. Give ear unto my speech. Many days and years shall ye be troubled, ye careless women. For the vintage shall fail, the gathering shall not come. Right? In that vintage, right? Those teats, as the scripture is going to say, these are the benefits that they received, right, from Esau Edom. But now that they're seeing that those same benefits, the well has ran dry, and all your years of being on the side of Esau by talking about your man, saying they ain't shit, so forth and so on. Now you're going to have to eat those words. Those same men that you were giving hell to, that you were putting on child support or whatever, guess what? You're going to need those same men, and those same men are going to turn face, and flee from you. It says, tremble, ye women that are at ease, be troubled, ye careless ones. Strip you and make you bare, and gird sackcloth upon your loins. They shall lament for the teats, for the pleasant fields, for the fruitful vine. And there it is, man. So the women of our nation, are about to go through, serious hell, man, right? Because you trusted in that serpent back in Genesis 3rd chapter, to the point where you didn't want a man. How? Why is it that our women are the only ones that say they don't need a man. You don't hear the Edomite woman saying they don't need their man. You don't hear the Moabite, the Chinese, Ammonite, Japanese women saying they don't need their man. You don't hear Elam saying she don't need her man. You know, it's only our nation, only our women, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, right? But that's, due to the curses and the rest of the madness. But nevertheless, you're going to have to eat those words. You don't need no man. Well, let's see. Hey, you not needing a man. Let's keep that same energy when Jacob's trouble is full throttle, man. When these birth pains, are come all the way into fruition, right? You don't need no man. So hey, let's see who's gonna protect you and your 3 to 5 children, man. Because that's what's coming. He is about to usher in a system in which he's gonna say, "Oh, we got you one more time, right?" And then you receiving that MLTB, that CH out to the P, and you're just gonna be destroyed by Yahweh Bashim Shai, man. But that's pretty much the point, I know this lesson was 40-some minutes, but I had to bring the edification out, man. So Lord willing, it was edifying to the body. I want to give all praise, glory, and honor unto Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai Bahashim Harakah Kodash. Double honors unto the apostles and elders of JMS Great Millstone, and a sincere shalom to Yakim bringing out this word in diligence and in truth. Shalom.